Well, a new poll out now shows a majority of Americans remain opposed to Obamacare more than 3 years after the law passed. 51% now say they disapprove of the law. Meanwhile, Republicans are also taking a hit in the polls, but don't expect that to deter them.
The latest polls show a GOP in free fall after this month's government shutdown. But tell that to the folks in Texas who gave Ted Cruz a hero's welcome today. After the shutdown ended, President Obama chastised those who tried to condition the government's operation on changes to Obamacare.
You don't like a particular policy or a particular president? Then argue for your position. Go out there and win an election. Push to change it.
The problem is that's what Republicans did before Obamacare even became law. And they succeeded. But then Democrats changed the rules. In the summer of 2009, the democratically controlled House and Senate began to push their ideas of health care reform.
The majority is against this plan!
And the American people rose up.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You want to leave?
I got news for you. That you and your cronies in the government do this kind of stuff all the time. One day, God's going to stand before you, and he's gonna judge you.
Lawmakers returning home that August were confronted at fiery town hall meetings.
You have awakened the sleeping giant. We are tired of this. This is why everybody in this room is so ticked off.
I charge you, Senator Cardin, with usurping authority not granted to you as a United States Senator.
We cannot afford this. Period. Keep the government out of it, we're doing just fine.
The Tea Party, founded on principles of limited government, was gaining steam, united in opposition to Obamacare. Still, that December, the Senate voted to end debate on the bill. All Democrats voted in favor, all Republicans voted no. But the deal was not done. The Senate still needed to vote on the bill itself. And then Ted Kennedy died. And Scott Brown, a Republican, ran to fill his seat. His biggest campaign promise? He would break the Democrats' filibuster-proof majority and stop Obamacare from becoming law.
I would be the 41st vote. I wouldn't be the 60th vote.
For the first time since 1972, Massachusetts voters elected a Republican to the U.S. Senate. But Democrats were undeterred. In a stunning move, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid used an arcane budgetary rule to deem the bill passed with just a 51-vote majority.
I hope we don't have to do this, but if we can't get the 60 votes we need, then we'll have no alternative.
In March of 2010, the House passed the Senate's bill, and the president signed it into law.
As we have all said many times, it's great pride and great humility that we undertook this great act of patriotism that occurred on the House floor tonight.
Can you say it was done openly? With transparency and accountability? Without backroom deals and struck behind closed doors? Hidden from the people? Hell no, you can't!
Just months later, the Democrats would pay a heavy price for pushing through a bill that, unlike other entitlements in this country's history, had zero bipartisan support and has never been favored by a majority of Americans.
A little bit of a pattern emerging here with some of these more moderate Democrats getting voted out of the House, and in particular Democrats who voted for the health care reform law.
Republicans promising to repeal the law were swept back into control of the House in 2010, capturing more than 60 seats and achieving the biggest party turnover in 70 years.
After the 2010 elections, emboldened Republicans introduced bills to try to repeal Obamacare over and over. But the president stated all along he would veto a repeal bill, even if it managed to pass both houses of Congress. Joining me now with more, Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume. And that look back explains some of the determination that Republicans, including Ted Cruz and others who feel as he do, have shown in recent weeks and will continue to show more, Brit, now that we're seeing the law suffer such problems.
No doubt about it, Megan. And of course, this problem with the rollout that we're seeing, that you've gone into at such length tonight, is an illustration of how fragile this measure was, because it did not have a single Republican vote behind it when it finally passed in the House after it squeaked through the Senate barely. That means that the other party has, no one in that party has any stake in this bill at all, in this measure at all. So their opposition to it is not only intense in some places, but they were all against it. It's unanimous. So you know, you don't have any that's underpinning that the political underpinning that previously enacted entitlement programs have had.
It's a good point. So you have people, you have half of the country, more than half, and half of the legislators, at least, you know, in the House and pretty much in the Senate, rooting against the bill. So when the problems come up, there's not an inclination to solve it. There's an inclination to say, we told you so.
Well, and there's also this, Megan, the premise upon which the shutdown, defund strategy was based was that if this thing ever did get up and running, that enough people would benefit from it and like it, that there'd be no repealing it. Now, there is a case of a bill that passed back in the 1980s that was a health care entitlement that was repealed the next year, but most people have forgotten about that. The premise has been that this would be unrepealable, unstoppable if it ever got up and running. I think from the point of view of the people who want this bill to be ended, that's too pessimistic a view. We're seeing now that it may prove that the government simply can't pull this off, that the government is not capable of mounting this kind of a program. And if that turns out to be the case, that's not only a blow to this program, but it's a blow to one of the core ideas of liberalism itself, which is that the federal government, the big national government, is capable of doing great and large things for the people. It's
a fascinating point, because tonight, Secretary Sebelius was asked, because she had to admit to the myriad problems that the law was, or that the website was suffering in the days before the launch. And the question was asked, when it kept crashing repeatedly days before, when you just had hundreds trying to get on, never mind tens of thousands of people, why didn't you say, hold on, let's continue testing this and get it right before we launch it? And Britt, she said, people have waited too long already, decades, for their health insurance. Waiting was not really an option.
Yeah, that's you know, that's a political judgment, Megan. And you know, when you think about it, and it may, if this doesn't improve pretty quickly, when people look back on this, they will say that this was a colossal mistake, that by far the better course would have been for them to wait until they had tested this properly and were sure that it could withstand the traffic and all the rest of it, and made sure that it worked. Because if this rollout continues to be a fiasco, as it's been so far, for too much longer, the enrollment goals, the sign-up goals that they have will not be met. The program will face a financial shortfall that will be major. There are all kinds of potential problems here, and the determination to go forward with it gives you a sense of how well aware they were in political terms of the fragility of this thing. But I still think, you know, they made a terrible mistake, I think, by going ahead with it under the circumstances.
Well, because right now what's happening is they're saying that those who are surfing the ObamaCare website, healthcare.gov, that's gone way down, 90% down from what it was initially. And the people they most wanted were young people. Young people barely wanted to handle things by text. They think email is like long-form letters for people like you and me. Never mind going onto the website and dealing with hours and hours and days of problems. And so what they have now, Britt, is a situation where they are not getting the very people they most want, and they launched too early. And now Kathleen Sebelius says tonight, now they've brought in the A-team of tech people to try to fit this. Now.
Yeah, and we don't really know, Megan, whether this kind of tech surge that they're talking about can be effective. All of this remains to be seen. And we need to be aware of this. I mean, it's certainly possible and maybe even likely that the problems will be repaired soon enough, and they'll kind of roll it out again, and people will take another crack at this. And they may find a health care plan that's suitable to them in sufficient numbers, that young, healthy people in sufficient numbers will sign up, and this all could still work. It's not outside the realm of possibility. It's just off to a terrible start.
Right.
And it does raise this question of whether indeed not only this program, but anything on this scale can be done.
And so does a technical problem become a policy problem?
Exactly.
Become a political problem beyond that?
Exactly right.
Britt Hume, thank you.